welcome back to the She Gallery Show. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, and thank you so much, our guest, Sara Slawnik of 3 Arts, for being with us as well. How are you doing, Sara?
I'm great. It's nice to see you, Dulce.
Likewise, nice to see you again. Recently, I had the chance to talk with Sara Slawnik. We got a chance to connect sometime last year, and we've kept in touch. And I continue to see what 3 Arts is doing and how they're contributing to our arts community. And it's just such an honor to have you here, and you could share a little bit more about your history, who 3 Arts is, and how they are helping the community. Again, we want to thank Can TV for this platform as we continue to face our COVID challenges and this new way of being, of living, and focus on these important issues in our community. So, Sara, why don't we start off with a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm the director of programs at 3 Arts. We're a nonprofit arts organization that supports local Chicago artists with grants and awards and other things that kind of help them be stable and thriving as creatives here in the city. And I've been doing that for about 6 years. I'm originally from Detroit, but I've been in Chicago for almost 15 years. So Chicago is definitely my home, and I've gotten a lot of experience with the cultural community here that I'm really grateful for.
Mm-hmm. And also, Sara is originally from Detroit, and then Sara actually moved to New York City, where she also had the chance to work. And then you came over to Chicago, and as you mentioned, there were some differences in working in New York than working in Chicago. Can you please talk to us about those differences and why Chicago has felt more like home to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while, and so much has happened, obviously, in the world since I was living in New York. But I would say the biggest difference for me is just the way that the Chicago cultural community is so connected and supportive of one another. I mean, artists are much more eager to help one another and network, so it's a little less cutthroat or competitive. Not to say that all of New York is like that, but that was definitely a vibe when I was there. And when I came here, it just never felt that way. It always felt like artists were kind of looking out for each other, going to each other's shows, teaching them things that they might have learned that might help the next person in line. And that has always been super inspiring for me. And I have to say, I think arts organizations here in Chicago are very similar. We're looking out for one another, and that's especially important now, as all of us are facing so many challenges, whether you're an artist or you're an arts organization. So that's probably the biggest difference. And it's just the people here have always just been so friendly and warm. And yeah, that's why it's home.
That is really awesome. And it's really great to hear that somebody had the chance to work in Detroit, New York, and then comes here and you're able to share all of these gifts. Somebody like Sara, who is extremely skilled. And one of the things that that you had the chance to learn about while working in New York, you got to learn a lot about fundraising, which has now helped you with your role here in Chicago, that is helping artists every single day and has been since 1912. So it was extremely inspiring to hear more about 3 Arts and its history, how it started out in 1912.
So it's obviously a long history. 1912 was when the 3 Arts Club of Chicago was founded. And that was a sort of a network of these clubs that were in a couple of different cities across the country, and even, I believe, in France and London. But ours was established in 1912 by some kind of radical women philanthropists of that time. And that was before women had the right to vote. They founded this club to be a supportive home for women aspiring to be professional artists or to gain more training in their craft. And we had a beautiful building built for the 3 Arts Club. It still stands today. And that's where the 3 Arts Club operated from for decades. It was really a beloved institution for a lot of Chicagoans. But as you can imagine, over time, the mission was a little bit dated, and the building itself it needed incredible amount of restoration. And at one point it was landmarked. And so fast forward, it really presented an opportunity for the organization to figure out a way that they could modernize the mission and still hold true to the support for Chicago and for women artists, but how to deepen that support. So in 2007, after a lot of wrangling, because it was hard to get rid of that building, but ultimately, they sold the building and netted the proceeds in order to transition into the grant maker that we are today. So that was a real turning point for the organization to expand its mission to not only supporting Chicago women artists, but finding out what other artists are lacking in the same equitable support, whether it's access to stages where they can, be promoting their art, or training grounds, or grants and awards like what we do now. So we expanded our mission at that point to also support artists of color and artists with disabilities. And in 2008 is when we kind of formally emerged as the three arts that we are today. And we have no longer any affiliation with the building. It still stands, but we're now at a different organization, but still have great ties and admiration for that history. But now we're in our 13th year as the three arts that we're known to be today, and we give significantly sized grants to artists across the city. Again, women artists, artists of color, and artists with disabilities in the performing, teaching, and visual arts.
That is really, really awesome. And it has grown. In the beginning, the awards were given to only three kind of artists, right? We had the musicians, theater. So it was awards were only awarded to for music, theater, and artists, visual artists. And I should take that back. That started at 15K. That's 15K, no strings attached, awards to musicians, artists that were involved in theater, and visual artists. And that does not mean that you had to use these funds necessarily for your art making, but just for your living, so that you can have freedom to create and stay connected. And then as years went on, as she mentioned, time grew, the mission got bigger, and then you were able to start to add grants to also teaching artists and to dancers, right? Um, and then in 2014, the award got bumped up to 25K, and so that's really exciting. So as she mentioned, it's strictly no strings attached. The organization, this nonprofit, is strictly dedicating themselves to raise funds, to grant or write grants, grant making, to raise funds to give back to the artist. And who else is doing that? Who else has dedicated their time to do something like this? As Sara mentioned, places like New York or other places that she had lived at and been at don't support the artists as much as artists do here in Chicago. And this is a grand example of people like you who are contributing all of your time and efforts to help artists. Like our small organization, She Gallery, or nonprofit, we help artists in the community all the time as much as we can. And that's why I took such a great interest in talking with Sara Slawnik and having you here and teaching us this great history of three arts. Um, so not only are you granting artists these awards on an annual basis, and we will talk about the awards that are coming up now that we are inviting everybody to join via Zoom, because as we know, as we keep continuing to mention, this is a brand new way of living for all of us. We are all wearing our masks, and we are all carrying our hand sanitizers, and we are keeping social distancing, and that is why Sara is joining us from home. And we remind everybody to please, please, please follow those restrictions. There's the numbers continue to go up, and everybody just wants to get back to a normal. We all know the economic crisis that everybody is facing. So please be responsible, wear your masks. And something else that Three Arts has done during these COVID-19 challenges is, aside from the awards, aside from keeping social distancing and broadcasting these awards via um, televised via YouTube, you also had the opportunity to grant some funds to artists, right? For it was a COVID-19 relief program. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that program and how Three Arts helped during the COVID lockdown, or continues to help?
Yeah, I'd love to. It was certainly this year's been unprecedented in so many ways, right? We keep even using that word. It's just that it's unprecedented, but that's exactly what it was, and what this program was for us. You know, we're not the only grant maker of artists in Chicago, but we're distinct in the types of artists that we support, and we're very multidisciplinary. So we were asked in, I believe it was the end of March, when these kinds of ideas were going on behind the scenes, to be part of an effort called the Arts for Illinois Relief Fund, which was a statewide effort with multiple partners from city and state agencies to private foundations and individuals who banded together and wanted to create a fund that would support artists across the state of Illinois with emergency relief grants, because we all know what happened when the shutdown occurred. All these artists and freelancers lost all of their gigs. I mean, you can't think of a musician or a stage that was open. So all those opportunities were lost, and for many artists, that's their livelihood. So this effort came to be, and we were invited. Three Arts was invited to be the to manage the distribution of individual grants to artists, and that was in the form of one-time $1,500 grants to any eligible artist in the state of Illinois who applied. We got more than 9,000 applications within actually, it was just within a couple of weeks. And the need far outpaced the available funding, but we ended up over the last couple of months since April 1st distributing just under 2,500 grants to artists across the state of Illinois. That represented a little over $3.7 million from that joint effort from all those philanthropists and public funding. So we're glad we could have been part of that. Of course, it was heartbreaking to also realize how many artists we didn't have the funding to support everyone, but it was a huge effort that really kind of pushed our small organization kind of to the outer limits of our capacity. But we were really humbled to be part of something like that was able to react so quickly and be very responsive to what artists were going through. And we know that there's still a lot of pain out there. So we're hopeful along with our partners that perhaps some other refueling of funds will take place, or other kinds of support, whether Three Arts is part of it or whether it's a broader part of the Arts for Illinois Relief Fund.
And that's really special. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Something else. So the annual awards normally take place at the MCA, but this year everybody is watching them from home. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about the awards from this year and what people who register can expect to see when they join on October 19th?
Yeah, and I'm so glad that this is airing before this so that I can kind of help people get to know about this, because we are really excited to, although we wish that we could invite people to the MCA or somewhere else in person to share this kind of great celebration of Chicago artists, we're doing the best we can to make it a really special night. It's going to be live on YouTube on Monday, October 19th from 6 to 7 p.m. And it's entirely free. So we really just want to make sure people across Chicago or even beyond are invited and able to participate in what is a celebration of Chicago artists. We're really excited that we'll be celebrating 10 artists who are going to be getting the $25,000 awards in dance, music, teaching, theater, and visual arts. And we'll also be giving 10 awards that we call Make a Wave. And these are $2,000 grants that are going to artists who are handpicked from the previous year's award winners. They get to pick some other artist in Chicago who they feel are making great contributions through their art, or an important community member, and it's a surprise grant to those artists that they don't have to apply or anything. They just get a check in the mail and a big party to help celebrate them. So we're really excited about that event, and we'll also be rolling out some great performances of past Three Arts awardees. We'll be having a debut music video of a brand new track from Sam Trump. He's a great soul singer and trumpet player. He's going to be debuting a brand new song just for our event, and a couple of other kind of special performances by Three Arts awardees that are spanning all the way back to our first award year from 2008. So we really hope people can join us. They can just go to 3arts.org/event. It's really super easy to register. And again, it's free. So we hope as many people join us as possible.
I know I'll be there. And we will also share that link on our website so that you can register there as well. Um, that's really special, and I can only imagine, the joy that these artists receive. As she mentioned, this is the surprise grants. So can you talk to us a little bit about how these artists are nominated and how they get awarded? What is Three Arts looking for when you pick your artists? As she mentioned, it's extremely competitive, and Chicago does have a lot to offer.
Yeah, so there are two different programs. The Three Arts Awards, the $25,000 grant, is a nomination process. So we invite about 35 people across the city of Chicago who we feel like are really familiar and plugged into the respective discipline, whether it's dance, music, theater, or what have you. So those nominators are each asked to put forward names of artists they feel are making great work and who they really want to give them a chance at this significantly sized financial award, of course, but also all the other things that come from Three Arts once someone is an awardee. So once we get all those names in, then we invite those artists to apply. And then we have jury panels. So we invite national experts in those disciplines to then read the applications, look over those work samples, and ultimately decide who the awardees are going to be. So um, those awards are very competitive, yes, and require an application process and everything. The Make a Wave grants are the super surprise ones. Those are the ones where previous years awardees, those artists that received the $25,000 grants, are asked to think of a person in Chicago who you just have a lot of great respect for in terms of being an artist or being a community member and someone who you really want to shine a spotlight on. So those are those Make a Wave grants. And they're called Make a Wave because we feel like they're kind of making a wave through the cultural core, that they're coming from artist to another artist. And that's pretty rare to have an artist to artist giving initiative like that. So we've been doing it now for a few years, and the artists who are able to select those other recipients really get a lot of pride from being able to kind of shine a spotlight on someone else they have a lot of respect for. So
That's really awesome. And we mentioned earlier, one of the things that Sara Slawnik appreciates about Chicago is the way that artists support other artists. And what these awards do is they force one artist to think outside of themselves and support another artist, where perhaps maybe they weren't necessarily thinking about that. But once you are asked, put on the spotlight, think of somebody that you feel deserves it, you really go through your line of artists and really start to appreciate the works of those artists a little bit more, because you are forced to pause and think about it, and I think that that does something. Perhaps it may spark a, what, I have always appreciated this artist. Why not work together? And you do see a lot of more collaboration within art, especially today, with so much going on in our city, whether it's political or whether it's political or whether it's political. It just seems like lately it has been very political. So why don't we talk about politics a little bit? They always say don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, but it is important not to talk about politics today. How is Three Arts affected by the elections, especially this year? Do you want to talk to us a little bit about the elections of 2020?
yeah, yeah, I mean, the arts are always kind of the first thing to be cut whenever there's public budgets being scrutinized. And so for us and any other arts organization, we're always wanting to be aware of, what that kind of discourse is and be at the front of that dialogue and say, it's really important. Public funding for the arts is really important. And so to be an advocate for the ways that public funding can make a real difference in cultural organizations, but also, artists is something that we always want to be behind. But this year was really important too, because the economic stimulus package that was passed, shortly after the lockdown enabled artists to get access to unemployment benefits for the first time. So suddenly freelancers and gig workers were able to apply for unemployment. That had never happened before. So obviously they saw a wave of applications, and we're all about creating and supporting, promoting more ways that artists can have their livelihood supported. So that kind of legislation is, public legislation is really important. But like you said too, like art is about politics. Art is at the center of every issue in our life. And, you know, especially this year, this election is about, you know, social justice, civil rights, human rights, and artists are at the center of those conversations. They're the ones that are most often making us see things differently, challenging the status quo, you know, teaching us things. And so we at Three Arts just want to make sure artists have as much support and tools to help keep doing that kind of work. So the election is super important, whether it's coming from an, you know, an organizational standpoint or just an independent voter, you know. So get out there and vote, make your voice heard.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. It's extremely important. And to recognize, the influence of voting that we do have. We do have a voice, and our opinion really does matter because it does affect the way that we live ultimately. As she mentioned, this is the first year that artists were able to apply for unemployment. So it is extremely important. As you mentioned, this year has been incredibly, incredibly challenging for many people. So mental health is in the middle of everything. And something that I've personally noticed that I may have mentioned before is like when I go to the store, whether it be to an art store or even a regular store, they seem to have run out of art supplies. And I continue to talk to people that were not necessarily making art or calling themselves artists in the past. Since the lockdown, they have found that as an outlet. And I find that very interesting, this need for music, this need for art, because at the end of the day, it does produce mental healing, awareness, and wellness when you're working together as a family or by yourself. However it is, art does that. It allows you to express, it allows you to feel, and that is extremely important. As she mentioned, artists, the funding for art is just not there, so it is extremely important in every way. um, so quickly, as we start to wrap up a little bit, Sarah, I want to hear a little bit more about when you heard about, how did you hear about Three Arts, and then what your involvement was with Three Arts, how you got started, and how it has shaped you personally since you've been
Hmm. Yeah, well, since I moved to Chicago in 2005, I was coming from, you know, already a couple of years in the arts administration field, which for me that meant fundraising and programming, you know, types of things. So I was kind of on the lookout, you know, I didn't know the Chicago cultural community very well, but Three Arts was one of the very first organizations that I learned about, and it's interesting that shortly after I moved here is when Three Arts kind of came out in its new emergence, you know, in 2008. So I was aware of them from the very beginning, and I was always really inspired by the mission, but also such direct support for artists. That was something that I always really wanted to be more a part of. And honestly, that's such a joyful part of my day. I mean, I'm in touch with, you know, almost 300 artists at any given time, you know, as part of my job. All these artists who've gotten their awards from Three Arts or some other kind of support, they're part of our community, and I learn so much from them. I get so much inspiration from them, and it really it keeps me going, and it makes me feel really proud to be part of this organization.
That's really awesome. We thank you again, Sarah, and we thank you for joining us today. Again, we will have a link so that you can register. You do have to RSVP to the awards that are happening on October 19th. Again, you will not be able to be there personally, but you will be able to be there. So please join the awards 2020 that Three Arts is presenting. Get to know your fellow artists in your community and learn a little bit more about Three Arts. Thank you again, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you guys again next week. Bye bye.